Hello fellow humans, welcome to So Threadable. I'm here today with my $11 thrifted brass bench. Unfortunately, I don't have a before photo. It looked like it came straight from a 70s catalog and then was left forgotten in a damp basement for like 30 years. So I didn't bring it in the house and instead stripped everything outside and chucked it all. It looked kind of like this, but instead of white, it was beige, and I don't think that was by choice. The fabric also had a big stain on it. Trust me, it was gross. Honestly, I felt kind of ripped off even though the bench was like cheaper than Chinese food. That was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years. This thing sat in my house for 2 years. My sister-in-law had 2 kids during that time. It took a global pandemic for me to get off my butt and finally do this. So let's start. Here's the strip bench, and you can see it's just an MDF board that's screwed onto the frame. The finished bench is going to look something like this. The full materials list is in the description, so you can go right now and decide if this video is worth watching. While you're down there, give this video a like. Oh wait. To start, we're gonna want some new upholstery foam. I ordered 2-inch thick foam, just because I want this bench to be nice and plump. And since we can remove the bench board, we'll trace it onto the foam. And this is the fabric I'll be using. Again, purchased 2 years ago. I want the foam to go over the edge of the wood a bit, like, you know that like Pusheen sticker where her flub just spills over the box? That's what I want this bench to be. So I'm adding 1 inch of foam to the length and width, therefore giving it a 1/2 inch overhang after I upholster it. Grab a bread knife and start cutting. I'm not the best at filming or cutting foam, but here's a footage of me cutting foam. To get that rounded top, I'm going to mark 1 inch in from the top edge and the side edge of the foam. And I'm going to connect the two with a diagonal line. That is the sliver I'm going to shave off. It's not going to be precise, it's not going to be pretty, but we're going to add some batting over it so it'll smooth over. Now that the butchering is over, I need to glue the foam to the board. I have this craft spray glue because that's what all the other people seem to be using, but full disclosure here, it's not very sticky. To the best of my understanding, the gluing is somewhat temporary because the fabric stapled to the board is ultimately what holds the foam in place. The craft glue doesn't even really do that. I have some rubber cement left over from when I fixed a pair of heels, so I'm just going to justify that purchase by dabbing some on the corners. Weigh that board down with books you don't regret receiving at a White Elephant gift exchange, even if you've never cooked anything from that book ever. Now let's talk measurements. Follow along because I had trouble understanding my own math and I had to go over it a couple of times. This particular bench is going to require 3 pieces of fabric: the main body panel, and 2 identical side panels. Let's look at the side panels first. My board measures 14 by 37 inches, and that's what I want the finished cover size to be. Even though I added the extra width onto the foam, that's not going to really matter. For the side panels, I shaved 2 inches off the top, so the top is going to be 13 inches. I just rounded the corners there. The bottom I'll keep at 14 inches. For height, the foam is 2 inches. The MDF board is 1/2 inch, which gives it a 2.5 inch height. I need the bottom to be 3 inches longer for stapling to the back of the board. These are the final measurements for the side panels. Now I need to add 1/2 inch seam allowance for everywhere I'm sewing, which is just along the top. Ultimately, it's a 15 by 6 piece with the rounded corners at the top. You'll need 2 of these pieces. For the main body panel, I need the finished size to be 37 inches wide. Add 1/2 inch seam allowance on either side. The width of the panel to cut is 38 inches. The length of the body panel needs to match the length and top of the side panels added together. Here is an equation for those of you who can just look at it and understand it. That means we need to add those measurements together for the side panel to find out how long the main body panel needs to be. So for this bench, it's 6 inches plus 6 inches plus 15. That gives 27 inches. The measurement for the main body piece is 38 by 27 inches. I know there's a little shaved off due to the rounded corners, but that's not going to make a big difference. And since we have excess to staple onto the back of the board anyway, it's not going to matter. Okay, piping. You can buy pre-made piping, or if you want the fabric to match, make your own. It's really easy. Take your cording and measure it. Mine is 1/4 inch, and you add 1/2 inch of seam allowance. That gives us 3/4 inch. Multiply that by 2 because the fabric needs to cover both the front and the back side of the cording, so the strip of fabric I need is 1.5 inches wide. Since these curves are pretty gentle and I don't have any 90-degree turns, I don't need to cut on bias. I'm also way too lazy to do that. I'll just cut 1.5 inch strips along the selvage. The selvage is actually left over from when I cut the main panel, so this is actually the exact length I need as well, so that worked out. Over to the sewing machine. You're going to want to use a zipper foot for this. The cording is bulky and a regular foot is not going to glide properly on it, and you're not going to get close enough with a large foot. Sew 1/8 of an inch away from the cording. This gives you a little bit of room to sew closer to the cording later, so no stitches show through after the piping is attached. Pin the piping and the side fabric right sides together. I'm using these quilting clips because the piping is bulky. You can just as easily pin parallel to the seam and take the pins out as you go. Pin along the sides and make sure to secure the curves. Sew along the same stitch line as before, still using the same zipper foot. And once you come to the curves, make sure to clip them so they match the curve of the side panel. This is what the finished side panel should look like. And repeat for the other side panel. Now it's time to take these two side panels with the piping and attach them to the body. Take the main body panel, fold the short edge in half, and clip a small 1/8 inch notch to mark the center. Fold the side panel in half and mark the center the same way. And match up these notches and start pinning these together and working outwards towards the edge. And so, now try to get the needle in as close as possible to the piping, because this is the finished piped seam for my bench. And the cover is done. Flip over your glued down foam and cut a generous piece of batting around it. Give it about an extra 3 inches around all edges. Tuck it as evenly as possible. Move some batting over to cover up the sharp corners of the bench board and put the cover back on. Staple the upholstery like you would tighten lug nuts on a tire, always across the way from the last one, and pull taut while you do it. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Do this many, many times. After everything is done, trim the batting and extra fabric. And the bench is done. Now I'm just going to reattach the top back onto the bench frame. I also had to tighten the frame itself a little bit. And bask in the glorious feeling of a completed project. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe!
Famous. Yes, that.